In July 1940, the site committee signed a contract to purchase the 3-story brick home. The first-floor living area was the ideal space for the future gallery, and the top 2 floors were renovated for workshops, studios, and classes. The dilapidated structure was in need of major repairs as it had been used last as a kitchenette tenement. IAP, or the Illinois Art Project, designers and architects provided renovation plans, and Brownsville businessmen donated construction materials. Over a 5-month period, IAP artists worked around the clock to construct a gallery, classrooms, meeting space, and craft shops. The interior of the center fused European and American design principles, and today provides one of the few remaining models of this style. WPA craftsmen constructed furniture for the building. Burroughs was pleased with the renovations as expert craftsmen from the FAP, or Federal Art Project, quote, did an excellent job of modernization while the fine features of the original structure were still retained, end quote. University of Cincinnati Master of Art thesis, quote, a fortress where beauty is cherished, protected, and cultivated. The Southside Community Arts Center, 1940 to 1991, by Anna R. Hearn, published in 2009. If historic preservation is storytelling about the built environment, then many people, current staff members and past staff members, board members, community members, design team members, and construction team members have been writing the next chapter of the Southside Community Arts Center's preservation story for the past few years. The following is a brief synopsis of this story that I've had the honor of co-authoring with the team since 2023. Hello, my name is Kay Kennedy Whiters. I'm the founding principal of wrkSHap kiloWatt, a historic preservation and owner's rep studio based in New York. On occasion, we partner with sub-consultants in allied preservation fields to support our client collaborators. For the center, we partner with 2 firms that provide services internationally, Jablonski Building Conservators and Leverett Masonry Consulting. The latter is based in Chicago, not too far from the center. Although I live and work in New York, at my core, I'm a hybrid Chicago South Suburbs, South Side kid, and an Illinois grad. Vis-a-vis the Great Migration, both sides of my family and I have been connected to the South Side, specifically Brownsville, for generations. Therefore, supporting the team as its preservation lead is of both personal and professional importance to me. wrkSHap kiloWatt is home to Black and historic preservation. In February, we kicked off our 2026 program theme called Been Preservation, acknowledging that, contrary to belief, Black people have been preservationists since before the passage of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And we kicked it off with our Black Preservation Ancestors Profile Series. To promote the presentation at the Chicago Architecture Center, held on Wednesday, February 25th, 2026, and to commemorate 65 years of the DuSable Museum, we profiled Dr. Margaret Taylor Burroughs, adding to her legacy that she was a Black preservationist. Many of these ancestors are unknown to the general public or known, yet few know of their preservation activity, nor view them as preservationists. We are changing that narrative. And specific to the center, Monique and the center's staff, Bill and the board of directors, are building upon a legacy of Black-led building reuse at 3831 South Michigan. wrkSHap kiloWatt's preservation scope has spanned from schematic design to construction documents, with these specific professional services peppered in that are common for a preservation architect to provide. Critical to fulfilling the preservation scope of work has been an understanding of the center's landmark status, which has enabled coordination with the city and state preservation agencies on the design. The center is one of the Southside's unique gems because it is a time capsule of Chicago national and international history. Unique to its status as a landmark is that it has two designations. First, it is locally is a Chicago individual landmark, and second, nationally, it's on the National Register of Historic Places. There are four types of treatment that fall under the umbrella of historic preservation, collectively known as the 4Rs. The current project at the Southside Community Arts Center checks all four boxes. Zooming out, the entire project is a rehabilitation, repair of existing materials and the existing building as a whole, and an addition to it. The proposed design in the Burroughs Gallery checks the box for restoration. Feature firm and team's design appears to resemble the 1940 design of the Burroughs Gallery, demolishing the drop-down ceiling that contractors installed after the 1940 rehabilitation. The project scope of work includes replacing existing architecture and engineering systems, such as a geothermal heat pump, replacing the existing mechanical heating and cooling system. The scope of work at the windows includes rebuilding window sashes that are not in masonry openings, checking the last box for reconstruction. Like any historic site that is a 130-plus year young elder of the community, 3831 South Michigan has a tremendous amount of embodied memory vis-a-vis its many lives, supporting many lives. For the Historic Structures Report for the Coach House, I developed this chronology of repairs, and from this timeline we can see this three-story building with its coach house is the epitome of rehabilitation and building reuse that reflects the evolution of life in Chicago and the United States at large. Phase 1, a single-family residence, first for the Severance family and then the Phase. In Phase 2, multifamily housing owned by the Phase for 8 tenants in kitchenette tenements, and later owned by Victor Reitz and Phase brother. And in its current phase since 1940, Phase 3, its commercial phase, it's been a community art center, art education center, and gallery space. From this timeline are two periods of significance that have served as the basis of the current preservation interventions. The first period of significance, the initial year of construction, 1892 to 1893, and the second one is the year the collective of Black artists who would evolve to become the Southside Community Arts Center purchased 3831 in 1940, which coincided with its new Bauhaus renovation, a unique, rare renovation of a building in Chicago and the United States, connecting to the school that preceded it in Dessau, Germany, the Bauhaus. In 1892, George A. Severance Jr., owner of the Severance Elevator Company, commissioned L. Gustav Hallberg, a Swedish-born architect who immigrated to Chicago to design the mansion and coach house in the classical Georgian Revival style. Thanks to the digitization of the U.S. Census records for Chicago in 1900, we know that Mr. Severance was not alone in this house. 3831 South Michigan was home to his wife Clara, their 2 young sons, and a host of servants. And thanks to the census, and someone like me who can read cursive, we know all of their names, including the names of the husband and wife who lived in the coach house, Charles Ansley, the, quote, barn man as he's listed in the census, and his wife, Mary. And fun fact, Charles Ansley was not the first barman, or also known as a coachman, under Mr. Severance's employ. And if anyone wants to learn of the drama around the first coachman that I read in the 1896 articles on the screen, please contact me. I would love to know more about this story. And if anyone can clue me in to why Clara Severance had to buy 3831 from the Severance Elevator Company for $30,000 in 1906, please contact me. Thank you. Okay. And we know the names of the subsequent residents, including servants in 1910. and in 1920. Reviewing these records shows that at its initial year of construction through the 1910s, the number of laborers who lived at 3831 outnumbered the residents of the wealthy white elite class. So imagine during this time period from 1893 to 1910, both sides of the 3800 block of South Michigan, filled with similar classical revival masonry mansions, each with its own coach house like the ones on the screen, and each with 5 to 6 people living and working in these homes of the wealthy white elite of Chicago. Now imagine the people who maintain these homes, nurse the children of the owners, people from Ireland, Sweden, and Germany, and later black migrants from the US South, like Alfred and Teresa, who worked at 3831. Would you say that this neighborhood, that on the surface appears exclusive, as a hidden layer of a working class immigrant and migrant neighborhood? I would. It was very much the case from 1890s through the 1910s, an upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey, Gilded Age neighborhood, like many in the city. And a side note about the change over time of the character of the neighborhood surrounding the center, it was also home to one of North America's leading builders of fine carriages, the largest in Chicago. 1 block south of the center was C.P. Campbell and Company of Chicago. Contractors completed construction of the building shown here in 1892, 1 year before the completion of 3831 South Michigan. Perhaps the carriage the Severance owned that lived in the coach house was a Kimball. It was definitely the case for another Southside resident at the time, the Glessners of Prairie Avenue. Shown here is the carriage monogram for their Kimball carriage and a carriage that resembles theirs. The second period of significance is the merging of like minds of artists from around the globe, both refugees. First, the collectives of Black artists in the US, descendants of enslaved Black people, whose parents migrated with them north to flee the legacy of white-led violence against them. And second, a collective of Eastern European immigrants who taught at the Bauhaus and emigrated to the United States after Hitler forced closure of the school. From 1939 to 1940, Margaret Taylor Goss, later Burroughs, Bernard Goss, Archibald Motley, and other members of the Arts Craft Guild and the Southside Art Center planned with the WPA, met with figures from a Renaissance that preceded their own, called the Chicago Renaissance, and that one was the Harlem Renaissance, and a fundraise for a more permanent space. Hungarian painter and former Bauhaus professor Laszlo Moholy-Nagy opened the new Bauhaus on October 18, 1937, with other World War II German refugees in the former Richard Morris Hunt design Marshall Field Mansion at 1905 South Prairie Avenue that carpenters, masons, and other craftspeople built in 1873. Despite U.S. segregation laws, they welcomed Black students. In 1941, Moholy-Nagy moved the school north to Streeterville. 2 years later, 2 of the school's instructors would lead the rehabilitation of 3831 South Michigan for the center in the new Bauhaus style. Their names were Hein Bradendieck and Nathan Lerner. Like the Bauhaus, the new Bauhaus designers experimented with furniture design, specifically plywood, as a furniture fabrication material, such as this 1949 design, chair in a box, a chair that some of you might recognize. It's a Lerner and Bradendieck design. A literal chair that comes in a box for the user to assemble, and shown here is a box that was at one point at auction. And it's a chair whose design aesthetic resembles a chair in the center's collection, shown here in the Level 2 gallery. Within our immediate preservation scope of work, New Bauhaus design elements in the main house are on the first floor and are also the landmarked area specific to its Chicago Landmark Designation Ordinance. The reception area plus the main stairs and Dr. Margaret Taylor Burroughs Gallery. And we see a clear connection between the new Bauhaus experimentation at the Marshall Field Mansion in 1938, how it influenced their design at the center in 1941. We can see at both stairs shown on this slide, painted plywood, enclosed guardrail with a bent wood topping at both stairs. At the Burroughs Gallery, they installed pine panels that were light in appearance over the existing wallpapered walls, wallpaper dating from the 1930s. When you visit the center, take a look at the gaps between the pine panels to see the beautiful floral design on the wallpaper that still remains. So back to the new Bauhaus School itself. Since 1949, it's been the Institute of Design at IIT. With the former site of the Marshall Field Mansion and IIT, the Southside Community Arts Center is part of a network of sites on the South Side associated with the new Bauhaus. Per the Chicago Landmark Ordinance, the entire exterior of the main building is a landmarked area. Leverett Masonry Consulting assessed the existing conditions, including mortar testing for repointing mortar composition, performed by Henry Frerick and Sons, located in Chicago's Avondale neighborhood. And wrkSHap kiloWatt documented the interior and exterior elements of the coach house in a historic structures report. To support the structural integrity of the masonry walls, we recommend cleaning and repairs in high priority areas, such as step cracks. Masonry salvage will also include the brick pavers at the former carport adjacent to the coach house. I had one of those joyful, unexpected moments in the field when I saw the name of the kiln stamped on these bricks in the coach house carport, Haidt and Alsop Brickyard, aka the Alsop Brickyard, owned by Frank Alsop in Alsop, Illinois. And fun fact, the Illini Brick Company acquired Haidt and Alsop Brickyard in 1899. We analyzed the windows and provided recommendations for their longevity and contribution to a weather-tight building envelope. Our infrared thermography at the Level 1 gallery has led to the hypothesis that there is a masonry opening sheetrocked over the interior that does not have window sashes, adding to the contractor's scope of work to provide and install 2 new window sashes at this opening, in other words, a reconstruction preservation scope of work. There is a decorative metal cornice at the south elevation, most likely from the 1893 construction, and the rest of the cornice is modern, devoid of detail. If the center moves forward with replacing the modern cornice, we recommend a decorative detail to match the extant 1893 cornice and to comply with the Chicago Commission on Landmarks requirements for in-kind replacement on the landmarked exterior. wrkSHap kiloWatt cataloged each pine panel in the Burroughs Gallery and reception area. Jablonski Building Conservation completed material conservation tests at the variety of wood finishes in the interior. To address select damage and deterioration of materials at the new Bauhaus reception desk, we've recommended a list of furniture restorers to restore it to as close to its 1941 appearance as possible. And last, one of the best discoveries up there with the wallpaper behind the pine paneling was a covered ceiling hidden above the drop ceiling in the new Bauhaus reception area, most likely covered in the 1980s at the same time that the center covered the new Bauhaus ceiling in the Burroughs Gallery. In the photo, you can see the wood framing of the coffers and the painted canvas in one of the coffer cells. The recommendation here is to remove the drop ceiling and replace the canvas in kind with similar material where it occurs. So, something else to think about during your next visit to the Southside Community Arts Center. In addition to what's behind the Burroughs Gallery's pine paneling, what's above me that I cannot see? And so thank you. Thank you for supporting the Southside Community Arts Center. Thank you to Feature Firm for inviting wrkSHap kiloWatt to collaborate on the current rehabilitation. And thank you to the staff and board of directors for continued collaboration and for your time and energy in being a steward of an important historic landmark of local, national, and international significance. Thank you.